Welcome to the Confessions of the Eldest Daughter podcast, where firstborn quirks meet comedic perks. Now let's unpack this trauma. All right, welcome back to another episode of Confessions of the Eldest Daughter. I'm Keandra, your host, and today we have a guest. So I'm super excited to introduce Nikkei. So, Nikkei, go ahead and tell the audience about you and all the stuff that you do.
Yeah, so I'm Nikkei, and I'm a certified wellness coach, and I help first generation eldest daughters overcome people pleasing so that they can improve their health, their work life balance, and their relationship without the guilt. And I'm an Atlanta born, Ohio raised girlie. So shout out to all my Georgia peaches and Buckeyes. And I love traveling. I'm a big foodie, and I enjoy luxury wellness because every Black girl deserves luxury. So I'm so honored to be here, Keandra. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for coming on. I had no clue that you were from Atlanta. I actually lived in Atlanta for like a little over a year, and it was amazing. I'd go
Oh,
back
yeah.
if I could.
Marietta area. That's where I was at.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I actually used to coach gymnastics out there. Girl, we'll talk after the podcast.
Yes,
But Atlanta was
yes.
fun. It was a time. But yeah, so if you guys haven't noticed, we are going to actually talk about people pleasing. And that's something I've kind of touched here on my podcast before. Because that's just I feel like that is something that eldest daughters we kind of tend to be people pleasers. And it doesn't
Mhm.
just affect you in like relationships or um especially like at home, like with your siblings or your parents or whatever, but it affects you outside of your home as well, like in the workplace and with romantic relationships.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you want to give a little bit more or talk more about people pleasing. Like, are you a people pleaser? Is that something you've experienced? So
Yes, girl. We're gonna get into it. If you don't know me, you're about to really know me. Okay, because so 3 years ago, I would have been like proud to be like, yep, I'm a people pleaser. Absolutely, that is me. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm not a people pleaser because I don't identify as that being who I am. I feel like 3 years ago was like, this is my identity. This is who I will always be. But 3 years ago, I went through this like huge healing journey. And if you've been through a healing journey, a little bit of it, you know it's rough. There's a lot that
very,
comes up. And
very.
I spent about 2 years doing this healing journey. And through that, I discovered why I was a people pleaser. I feel like I knew it, but didn't really care why. But when I found out why, that's when all the heavy stuff came up. So, for me, I found out, well, one, I had a lot of microaggressions and racism because I grew up in a predominantly white area
Mhm.
for my color of my skin. I'm considered dark skinned. So I was teased for that. My
Yep.
Nigerian heritage, my name, I was teased for that. So one from that, then I realized, oh, my dad was emotionally unavailable. So I felt like his disappointment was way louder than his love. So if I made a mistake or just did a thing that kids are supposed to do, like I felt like the disappointment and all of the discipline was so loud. And
Mhm.
he didn't talk about feelings. Like that just wasn't a thing. So my feelings were minimized. And then there was a lot of conflict in my family. My parents argued a lot
Mm.
up until they were divorced. And then they went through a nasty divorce, like private investigators, all of this stuff. And then after their divorce, they still were nasty to each other up until I graduated high school. So it was just always conflict and dysfunction. And so I, yes, was a people pleaser up until about 30 years old. In all of my relationships, and like you mentioned, work, romantic, friendships, all of them, I was people pleasing 100%.
I want to circle back because I didn't know I'm getting emotional. I didn't know me and you had so much in common. Oh my gosh, I don't want to cry. I didn't know we had so much in common when it comes to let's start off with growing up dark skin. So being oldest daughter and being dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
The people pleasing that correlates with that is more so like, well, you probably felt like you wasn't anyone's preference. So
Yeah.
you wanted to be the best at everything. You want to be perfect at everything. So they like, yeah, I may not be your preference, but you can't say I'm not smart. You can't say my hair is not done. You can't say I'm not
Mhm.
pretty. I'm like, when I tell you, girl, I was cheer captain. Like I was a cheerleader. I was in all AP classes. I did
Are
everything.
we the same person?
That's why I'm
I
getting
did
so emotional.
gymnastics. First of all, I did gymnastics. I
Same.
cheered
I was
as
a coach.
well.
Oh my God. Girl, okay, everyone listening, me and Nikkei did not know each other prior to this
No,
podcast,
no.
and I am over here literally crying because
That's
I feel so
crazy.
seen. I feel so seen. But yeah, just back to piggyback off what you said. Yes, my parents
Mhm.
nasty divorce, same thing. I'm the oldest of six. But
Mm.
my last three siblings are my dad's children. But the first three, I just felt like I had to be the one to keep things together for my younger two siblings. And so, yeah, a lot
Yes.
of people please. There's a lot of saying yes, not saying no. And then that
Mhm.
just trickled over into work and school. And I would 3 years ago, literally, the pandemic hit. Um,
Yep.
that's when I had this, I called it a spiritual awakening. Like, and I was
Mm.
falling out with people I knew since birth, like best
Mm.
friends I've known for years because they no longer aligned with what I wanted for my life. And I
Mhm.
was tired of being um what is it, like a doormat or a lapdog, or just
Yes.
being pushed over and my feelings being
Mhm.
invalidated. So it's crazy that you said that because I literally went through the same thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, continue. Sorry.
No, you are good. This is a conversation. So I love that you even are sharing it because it also makes me feel validated in my lived experience too, you know? Um, and so yeah, I'm a people pleaser. That's what I was like realized by myself and finding out the why of it was like it also made me feel like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like there's
Right.
a reason for why I tend to want to people please and all of these different things. And so, I mean, how did I overcome people pleasing? Like, can I talk about that?
Yes.
Okay.
'Cause I'm still trying to overcome it. Cause I felt like for me, it was like I was so used to not being picked. Like you almost become a
Mm,
pick me. And it's like I was so used to not being picked. So I never wanted to make anyone mad. I never want to tell anyone no. I always wanted to do my best and whatever. And it's like I don't know if you've been seeing like recently, everyone's been comparing like Taylor Swift and Beyonce and how Taylor Swift is
yep.
mediocre or whatever. And it's like we never get to be mediocre. We always have to be the best. And I felt
Yep.
like as an oldest daughter, it was like that times two. Like, yeah, I'm black or whatever, but I'm a dark skinned black girl and I'm the oldest daughter. I always have to be 5 times as better.
Yes.
2 times, it's
Oh,
5 times as better. So
mm,
yeah. So how did you overcome that? Because I'm still working now. I just kind of tell people no, and if they be mad at me, they be mad at me.
mhm.
But I'm still working through it. So how
Yeah.
did you overcome it?
Well, okay, I do want to preface this for anybody watching or listening. Like, be kind to yourself. Eldest daughters
Yeah.
need that times 10. Like, it wasn't linear. Like, it took a lot of deconstructing my limiting beliefs around a lot of stuff. And when the heavy stuff came up, I let myself feel and grieve through it without rushing myself. Um, and I had support. I didn't do it alone. And be real discerning about the support you choose to let into that space when you are going through your healing journey. So, the three things that I did number one is I improved the relationship I had with myself.
Mm,
And I like to tear those out into three areas, which I focus on a lot with my clients because first gen eldest daughters, period, need it. It's self trust, self
mm,
compassion, and self awareness.
yeah.
So, self trust yourself that you know what you need because growing up, we always had to think about everybody else's needs. So sometimes we can't even trust, like, wait, do I need that? Like, we can't trust the decisions we make for our own needs, our own well being, our own dreams.
Right.
So, growing in that self compassion, how do you talk to yourself? Do you beat yourself up? Do you call yourself lazy? Like, that is so, so important because I also want to call out eldest daughters are probably the biggest encouragers in their friend groups.
Yeah. I'm
They are like lifting everybody up
hyping everybody up. Always.
always, but we don't give it to ourselves ever.
Right.
We're the most critical towards ourselves. And so then the last one of self awareness, being aware of like what my body needs, what my mind needs, what my soul needs, and like listening because there was never a right time growing up for our needs to be vocalized. It was like, no, 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 not right now.
Right.
There's always something else going on or a sibling to show up for or whatever. So
Right.
the first thing was like improving that relationship with myself. And then the second thing was boundaries. Like knowing what my boundaries are is one thing, but then I actually had to use them. Like a lot of us know what our boundary is. And to me, I tell people a boundary is communicating to people how they're going to treat you and how they're going to talk to you.
Right.
That's what a boundary is. This is what I'm going to tolerate. But
Hmm.
then you have to use it. So that I had to grow in. And then the last thing was having healthy coping strategies
Right.
because you're going to get triggered. A family member, a situation, it's going to trigger you. And whether that's journaling, exercise, therapy, a coach, like find a healthy coping strategy. There are some triggers that don't trigger me anymore. And then there are some I'm like, ooh, and I have to go through these same steps again
Hmm.
because that trigger is so deep in terms of the wound. And then just repeat, rinse and repeat. That's how I have overcome people pleasing. And so, again, like perfectionism can bleed into this a little bit. You don't beat yourself down when you're like, oh, I kind of gave in to people pleasing in that way a little bit in that situation. Like, I must still be a people pleaser. No, that's not your identity. You're growing in the skill of not being a people pleaser. So give yourself grace and be kind to yourself. So that's kind of like how I overcame it.
Okay, so I want to give an example of people
Yeah.
pleasing outside of, typical like at home with our parents. 'Cause I mean, we're grown now. So a
Yeah.
lot of us aren't, hopefully, we aren't still babysitting and, and doing stuff at home. Um,
Mhm.
but people pleasing for me in the workplace and in my
Mm.
relationships, my romantic relationships is something that I've been working on stopping. Um, and I just want to share like how I've kind of done it. I'm still kind of working on it, when it comes to my relationships, like with boys, with men.
Because they be acting like boys, though.
Exactly. That's why I have to, but I don't want to offend nobody. But, like I know, for example, with me in the workplace, I always talk about like on my TikTok or on Twitter or whatever, I always talking about how, I sometimes I get overwhelmed with work because I don't tell people no and
Mm.
I don't want to be not a team player. I know recently we had one of my coworkers quit. So I'm a case manager. So
Mhm.
her caseload was divided between all the people who were left. So it's like I already
Mhm.
have like this amount of people on my caseload. Now I got like six more people. And
Mm.
it was very, very, very stressful for me. And I had to communicate that with my supervisor, like, yo, like if you are expecting my best, like you're not going to get that. I am overwhelmed. I am stressed out. And it's to the point where I'm like taking a lot more mental health days than I
Mm.
thought. Because I think people pleasing for so long since you're literally a kid until now I'm 30 years old, I'm burnt out. Like I can't
Mm.
I can't keep people pleasing if I wanted to because it just
Mhm.
doesn't I ain't got no more juice left, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if you are like one of those people, if you're listening, you're one of those people who like people please at work, I think the biggest thing for me, and it could just be I just have a great supervisor, but talk to people and let them know, like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm overwhelmed. I am stressed out. And if you want this to get done, it may take longer than what you're usually, used to from me. Um,
Yeah.
and then when it also comes to people pleasing in relationships, I used to be like a big pick me. Like I was like, oh, I'm like the perfect girlfriend. I go to church.
Mm.
I graduate, I have a college degree, I got my own house, my own car, my own, and it was just like none of that kept me from getting cheated on.
Mm.
I don't know if that was just what made me wake up. And I was like, why am I being a pick me? Why am I being this people pleaser? Why am I so scared of people leaving me? I know it stems from childhood trauma because in my
Mhm.
mind, or as a child, I felt like I was this perfect child and I got good grades and I was never in trouble in school, and my parents still divorced. It's like,
Mm.
when you're a kid, that you don't realize that like when your parents divorce, that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But as a child, like that's what I would tell myself. So I always want to be the perfect child. And then now as an adult, I always want to be the perfect adult, the perfect partner, the perfect coworker, the perfect employee. And
Mm.
that none of that has kept me from not having problems, not being stressed out, not being depressed. Like if anything, it probably made it worse because I was so consumed on letting people down, but I wasn't trying to take care of myself. So I know you
Yeah.
had mentioned earlier like self-care and boundaries and all of that. And I hope that whoever listens to this podcast, they understand just how important that is because what ends up happening is you run out of juice and then you're
Yeah.
just burnt out and you ain't good to nobody. You're not good to yourself. You're not good to your family, and
Mm-mm.
you physically can't help anybody. people pleasing
Mhm.
doesn't really help anybody. It helps people, I guess, other people temporarily, to get
Mhm.
what they want from you, but then when you get burnt out, then what? Then you're no good,
Exactly.
and then you get thrown away. So,
Exactly.
especially when, like, so back to, like, relationships and stuff, I feel like, now I'm a little bit more specific in what I want. Like, I'm not the type person that just has to have somebody. And so a
Mhm.
lot of people get cut off for the smallest of things. My grandma tells me all the time, she's like, "Girl, you ain't gonna never find nobody because you cut off everybody." And I'm just like, well, but I've been cut off. I've given my all to people and they still cut me off.
Mm.
So if I
Mm.
find something that I don't like in somebody and I feel like it's a deal breaker or I feel like it's gonna lead to a bigger issue in the future, then
Mm.
cut them off. And I feel like that has kind of helped me stop being a people pleaser or a pick me because
Mhm.
I'm actually standing on business and sticking to those boundaries. I know what
Mhm.
I want in a partner. I know what I want in a husband, a future father of my kids. Like,
Mhm.
and I feel like, people pleasing, sometimes you settle for a lot just to get picked, because you want
Yep.
everybody to like you.
Yep.
And it took me probably my last relationship, which was like 3 years ago. He literally told me, he was like, "No, you are perfect." He was like, "You being my girlfriend was like a trophy. I didn't think I could even get you. You did absolutely nothing wrong. It was all me." And I was just like, "What am I supposed to do with that? Like, there's nothing I can do to improve myself for the next person so I don't get cheated on again." And he was just like, "No,
Mm.
you're fine." Like, that has always stuck with me, and that's probably why I'm still, like, super picky now, like, I still haven't to
Mhm.
another relationship because it's scary, but
Yeah.
hate that it took a traumatic situation like that to wake me up to stop people pleasing in my romantic relationships, because I was just kinda like, well, I was the perfect girlfriend, and it didn't stop me from getting cheated on. So I'm not
Mhm.
saying like, "Hey, stop being, like, a good girlfriend," if you're listening and you're watching this, but I'm just saying, girl, like, make sure, you taking care of yourself too, because
Yep.
people pleasing is not gonna stop you from, or it's not gonna stop people from, you know, just doing you wrong or, getting
Mhm.
you or invalidating your feelings. Like, it doesn't stop anything because
Mhm.
people are just people. I guess I don't really know how to really explain it, but it
That's
doesn't
so
stop
true.
anything.
And I love what you shared about with work related people pleasing is people communicating.
Yeah.
Like that is huge. And I love that you did that with your boss in order to communicate it. And sometimes just verbally saying something is validating for us in and of itself. Like, okay, this is a real experience and real feelings I'm feeling. So I love that you shared that. And again, I feel like we got the same life. My last relationship was 3 years ago, and my ex literally, I met his family, they loved me, like, he broke up with me, and I was like, "Okay, so, like you, what can I work on? Was there any red flags? Were there things of concern?" And he was like, "No, we're so aligned, like, your faith is inspiring, my family loves you, blah, 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 we have the same values, we wanna raise our kids the same." He's like, I don't really have an answer for you." I was like, "What am I supposed to do with that?" Like,
Girl,
what feedback do I give to the next person of like, "Oh, why did that relationship break up?" I don't know. Like, I
yeah,
literally don't know. But I will say what drove a lot of my people pleasing and dating relationships is the narrative of the fear of being abandoned. And so that is like you, what drove me to continue people pleasing because I associated communicating how I felt or dealing with conflict in a healthy way that then they'd want to leave. They'd say, I'm too much, I'm too needy, or whatever. When in actuality, if the person is emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent, self aware, knows how to communicate, that's not going to be the case at all. They're not going to think that. But that's just what my brain, off of experience, was like, but this is true. So I resonate with that so, so much in terms of dating relationships. But again, like you said, what you found, you got to ensure you're filling your own cup and meeting your own needs in a relationship. You got to make sure you're communicating how you feel
mhm,
and giving your partner the opportunity to show up and meet that need and support you emotionally and what you're needing and what's appropriate. So I feel like I love how you've found the things that have helped you in the workplace and in your relationships, just like overcome people pleasing taking over,
yeah.
just wreaking havoc. You know what I mean?
'Cause I always wanna make sure I'm still the person that my family and friends know and love, the one that always shows up, the one, that's reliable. And I think that's the word, reliable. I feel like a lot of older siblings, we're so used to being reliable. And
Mhm.
I think whenever I feel like I can't be reliable, I feel like a failure. I feel like, oh, they're not going to be my friend anymore. And for the longest, I did not know where that stemmed from. I was like, why does it physically hurt me to tell people no and to not show up?
Mm.
It was some things where I would just stop showing up to like social gatherings and stuff. And I would think like everyone hated me. I had no more friends. They were just like, girl, people are grown. Like we have lives. Like people go through things,
Yeah.
I have so many people who I hope they don't think it's beef. Because in my mind, it's not beef, but it's like
Mhm.
you can't go to everything. You physically can't. Like sometimes it's money related, sometimes it's distance, sometimes
Yep.
it's schedule conflicts. Like you literally can't be there for everything. But as someone who made it their duty to be there for everything, it would be so funny because people would be like, oh, I thought, you were mad at me because you didn't come to my birthday dinner or my baby shower or whatever. And I'm like, nah, I kind of just had stuff to do or whatever. It was like, because you
Mhm.
always come through, you always show up. And
Mm.
that was just part of people pleasing. And they wouldn't even know that me always coming, always showing up would stress me out, whether it was
Mm.
financially, whether
Say
it was
that.
trying to make everything, whether
Yep.
it was just getting there sometimes or waking up. I remember years ago, my best friend at the time had her baby shower, and that's when I had went through that horrible breakup I spoke on before, and I
Mhm.
literally had been in the bed for days, not eating. I lost like 15 pounds in like space of like
Mm.
3 days, just depressed, didn't tell nobody, and I was sitting there going through things, and I remember calling her, texting her, and be like, "Hey, would you be mad if I didn't go to your baby shower?" And she was just like, yeah, because you're like my best friend," and I was just like, okay.
Mm.
And I mean, I don't even think she knew. I mean, I think I told her eventually later that, like, hey, I wasn't in a good place. Like,
Mhm.
it's a blessing that I got in my car, got dressed up, and came to your baby shower. And everyone's like, oh, girl, you look good. You so skinny. Baby, I ain't eat in like a week prior to that. I went through the worst breakup of my life. And it's like, you don't even get a chance to like tell people that because it's just like, they're
Mm.
just happy you're there and you're showing up
Mm.
for them. Whole time
Mhm.
you at home crying. I was crying
Mm.
for days, literally skinny because I had not eaten anything.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of like my spiritual awakening of I need to
Mhm.
stop people pleasing. And when I am not okay, I'm not okay and I need to take care of myself and maybe voice that or communicate that. I'm not saying you have to tell everyone your business and
Right.
what's
Right.
going on. But if you're not okay and that's really your friend and that's really your family member and they love you like they say they do, then they will understand. And I think
Mhm.
that's probably like the biggest lesson. I know we always talk about confessions and lessons on here, and we haven't got to that part of the podcast. But if you don't take nothing else from this podcast,
Yes.
the biggest lesson is if people love you and stuff like they will understand. The people that are for
Mhm.
you, that are meant to be in your life, and are meant to be a part of what you got going,
Mhm.
if it's real and they not using you for nothing, they will understand when you can't show up or if you're not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that sometimes, like, you will come up against family or friends who may intentionally or unintentionally say certain things that will trigger guilt in you or shame for, explaining your boundaries or saying, "Hey, I can't make it to that," or "Hey, I can't participate in this group trip. I just don't have it financially."
Mhm.
And then they may say certain things. Now, that can feel very just like, is it me? Am I the problem? Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? And it literally has nothing to do with you. It's a them problem. So
Mhm.
I also too want to, like, if you feel like, oh, I've tried to express boundaries to like quit people pleasing, but then the family member says this or the friend says this, and it just makes me feel guilty or it makes me feel, you know, ashamed. I'm like, okay, then in what I want you to do is ask yourself, what am I making what they said mean about me as a person?
Mm.
And do I think that that's true based on facts? And like, let that be like what guides you to be like, oh, I feel guilty, but I'm making it mean that I'm not a loyal friend. But that's not true, which means that this is their thought to have about the circumstance and their thoughts only. I don't even have to accept that as true. And I'm not saying that the guilt will just erase away or the shame will just erase away, but it will not linger for as long. when you've helped your brain understand that I'm making this mean this about me as a person. And that is not even true. It's far from it.
Right. So it's about, I think we can go ahead and wrap this podcast up because I feel like, girl, this podcast will end up being 2 hours if we let
I
it.
know.
Hopefully, we can have Nikkei back on the show if y'all want
Yes.
it. But
Yes.
this is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes that I've ever filmed.
Mm.
Because it just feels great to finally be seen, and I feel
Yeah.
like that's what people tell me, like whenever they message me about the podcast, like, oh, I went through the same things too, blah blah. But it's
Mm.
crazy how God would bring people into your life. 'Cause me and Nikkei did not know each other. Like
Yeah.
he found me through my podcast on social media. And I
Yes.
feel like me and her have lived the same life, which is
Hmm.
so crazy to me. But I'm happy that we had this conversation. We're gonna go ahead
Yes.
and end this podcast. Over here, we like to end it with a confession and a lesson. It could be
Okay.
anything. It could be related to the topic at hand today, or it can be just something juicy, whatever. So
Okay.
okay, what is a confession and a lesson that you have?
So I would say a confession is I've been sleep on myself, y'all. Sleeping on myself, but I'm woke now. And what I mean by that is I've been undercutting myself on opportunities,
Mm,
on believing more of what I want and that I'm worthy of that and I deserve that, and minimizing myself. And I just refuse to do that. Like, I'm done. And it was a hard, like, reality to accept. I'm like, girl, you've been like silencing yourself. Like, you be bigger, dream bigger, be
right.
audacious. So that's my confession.
Okay.
And lesson is honestly that the little me, she still wants to be heard and seen. Like,
Mm-hmm.
little me really does still want to be heard and be seen. And if I don't, she'll throw a tantrum. And
Right.
then I'll find myself doing things before I was healed that I'm just like, why are you doing this? So I just learned to like give space for little Nikkei and like, listen, what's coming up for you? Oh, I know you feel nervous about going to meet new guys. Like they weren't very nice in the past, but guess what? Like I'm going to make sure we're safe now. Like I'm going to make
Right.
sure that they don't run over us and that I will have our back. Like, so that's a lesson that I'm kind of learning. Like, don't ignore her because she was ignored growing up. So love on her, listen to her. So that's my confession and my lesson.
Yes. So go ahead and let people know where they can follow you. You have a podcast as well, and go ahead
Yeah.
and shout yourself out so they can see you after this podcast.
Yes, I would love to have y'all over on Instagram. It's Nikkei_Lamodi. I also have a podcast, The Wellness Help Desk, and you can join my email community. I send out an email every week about how to live your life on your terms as the eldest daughter. But I also offer coaching services. So, one on one coaching, I have a program where I help support you curating your lifestyle that is rooted not in people pleasing, but in you living the life that you want without the guilt. So, I would love to talk to you, to meet you. And I'm so honored to be here, Keandra. So thank you.
Of course. And I'm going to have all of her information in the description box as well. And make sure I go follow her and talk to her, hit up her. And I'm so happy we met.
I
I'm
know.
gonna have to get you to start coaching me, girl, because the way you almost had me crying on my podcast, I said I would never cry on camera, and hopefully I
Oh,
stopped it because I didn't want makeup to run.
and your
But
makeup look good, girl.
thank you, I tried. I really did try. I ain't wearing makeup in about 2 weeks, but I was like, I'm gonna put on my face for Nikkei today. I'm about to go take it right off. But thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Make sure you guys go over on Instagram and follow us on Coed Podcast. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.